Good evening and welcome. My name is Mcallist with the City of Santa Ana Public Works. You've joined the virtual community meeting for updates on the South Main Street Corridor project. Today is Thursday, December 2nd, 2021, and we'll be starting the meeting in a few minutes at 5:30 p.m. We appreciate you standing by, and we'll be starting our meeting shortly. Thank you. Once again, this is Michelle Mcallist with the City of Santa Ana Public Works. You've joined the virtual community meeting for updates on the South Main Street Corridor project. Welcome again, everyone. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions during the meeting, and if you want, we can unmute your mic to ask questions during the presentation. And we'll be starting the meeting in just a couple minutes.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos a la reunión virtual de la ciudad de Santa Ana. Vamos a iniciar nuestra reunión en unos minutos. En un momento más les estaremos dando instrucciones de cómo ingresar a la interpretación para que puedan escuchar la reunión en español.
Good evening, and welcome to the virtual community meeting on the construction activity of the South Main Street Corridor project from the City of Santa Ana Public Works. We appreciate you making time in your busy schedule to attend the meeting tonight. My name is Michelle Mcallist with the City of Santa Ana Public Works. Before we start the presentation, I will review the ways you can participate and ask questions during the meeting. If you join the meeting using the Zoom link, please locate the interpretation symbol on your control bar. And you'll find that control bar either at the bottom or top or the side of your screen. And once you've located that interpretation symbol, which looks like a globe, please select either English or Spanish. Even though you hear me speaking in English, if someone's speaking in Spanish, it'll be translated to you in English. So please select which language you want to hear the meeting in, English or Spanish. If you've joined the meeting with the Zoom link, there's two ways that you can participate in the meeting. You can raise your hand. If you have a comment to make or want the organizer's attention, use this function. And the raise hand symbol is again in that Zoom control bar, whether it's at the bottom side or top of your screen. Or if you have a question, you can type it in the chat box or the Q&A section. And both the chat and the Q&A symbols are located in your Zoom control bar. If you join the meeting using your telephone, you can raise your hand by dialing star and then the number 9. And then to unmute to speak during the meeting, you'll dial star and the number 6. Your questions and observations about the project are very important to us. This meeting is all about you and providing you information on the project. We appreciate you asking questions. We have a number of city staff participating in the meeting tonight that I'll introduce you to now. Please wave when I call your hand or call your name. From our neighborhood initiative team, Margarita Macedonio. From community development, Tram Lee. From the Public Works Agency, engineers Ruben Casanita, Isabel Gomez, Sean Thomas, Rudy Rosas, Jason Gabriel, our city engineer, William Galvez, and our executive director, Nabil Saba. Also with the Public Works team is our construction consultant for the Main Street project, Omar Andaishi. And with us tonight is our professional translator, Tanya Garcia. Margarita, did I miss anyone?
No, I think we're good, Michelle.
Before we start our presentation, Nabil Saba, our Public Works Executive Director, has a few words he wants to share with us. Nabil?
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Nabil Saba. I'm the Executive Director of Public Works Agency. I'd like to welcome everyone to this virtual meeting on the South Main Street Corridor project. We have accomplished quite a bit from the start of that project and will continue to progress to hopefully end up with a really good product of this 2.5 miles of improvements on South Main. Our presentation will include project history and funding. We'll also touch on the improvements that we are undertaking right now. We'll talk a little bit about the public arts, and we'll provide you with, again, construction updates and the challenges we are facing throughout this project. And we will also touch on the community concerns that have surfaced throughout the project. And finally, we'll share with you on how to share information, concerns, and interact with our Public Works and Neighborhood Initiative team on this project. Again, welcome to this meeting. I will be here to answer any questions along with our engineering staff. Thank you for participating, and we do value your opinion and your feedback greatly. I just wanted to let you know that we do have a web page for this particular project that you can share with us. All of your concerns, we have many ways to allow you to give us your feedback and your comments. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nabil. Now our Public Works Senior Civil Engineer and the Project Manager, Sean Thomas, is excited to share an update on the construction of the South Main Street Corridor project. Sean?
Thank you, Michelle. Can you guys see the right screen right now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully, most of you guys know me by now because we've had several meetings on this South Main project. And but for those that don't, my name is Sean Thomas, and I'm here today to give you an update on the South Main Street corridor improvements. Since translation services are occurring during this meeting, I will try my best to speak slowly and to pause frequently to ensure that everyone receives the information clearly. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation and the panel will do our best to answer them. Some of the questions you may ask, we may be covering in upcoming slides. So we may kindly ask you to just or hold off on our responses until we get to those slides. And then so we can talk about, the questions that pertain to those slides. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is to update you guys on the construction of the project, but I'll briefly touch base on the history and scope as well. So, project history and funding. Back in 2014, as a result of a settlement between the city's redevelopment agency and someone named Scott Peebler, the city set aside $4.7 million for public improvements within the South Main corridor. So the availability of these funds led to the development of the vision plan for the corridor. The reason why they developed this vision plan is so that the investment could be well thought out and could be developed with community input. Since then, the city has secured and infused several other funding sources to make this project as complete as possible. And right now, the total construction funds now exceed over $21 million. And that's all dedicated to the street and roadway and utility improvements within the street limits. So we're not doing any improvements on private property, and we're not widening the road or acquiring any properties with this project. Okay, let's dive into the project now. So the project spans over 2.5 miles from First Street on the north to Dyer Street on the south. This is a unique project because it touches so many different neighborhoods. Pacific Park, Henninger Park, Madison's Park, Wilshire Square, Memorial Park, and Delhi neighborhoods all touch this project. Although there will be improvements throughout the entire corridor, the majority of the aesthetic improvements you'll see in the two focus areas, which are, there's one focus area in the north, which is between First Street and Chestnut. There's also a focus area on the south between Stanford Street and St. Andrew. These focus areas were determined during the vision planning stages with community input. So if you look up the vision plan is available on the project website. It also has its own website. Back when that was developed, the community kind of came up with these two focus areas. So if you want more information on that, feel free to look at those documents and you can see how we arrived at those. But they're really meant to be a testing ground for what can eventually be applied to the rest of the corridor. So hopefully one day, if when the funding's available, we can continue these improvements throughout the whole corridor. So to go over what's the types of improvements that are going to be happening, the overall corridor improvements. So throughout the entire project, we're going to get improved landscaping, new street furniture, like benches and trash cans, delineated parking spaces, all new curb ramps, the wheelchair ramps. There's going to be enhancements to the medians. There's going to be pavement rehabilitation. So the entire limit from Dyer to First will have brand new pavement by the end of the project. Bus shelters are being changed out. The bus shelters that were on Main, the galvanized metal bus shelters have been relocated mainly to Sunflower Street. And bus shelters, these new bus shelters, like you see in this slide, are going to take their place. So those should be showing up very shortly now. There's also going to be decorative light poles. So the existing light poles that we see out there are going to be removed, and new light poles that are decorative, the Edwardian style decorative light poles, are going to be installed throughout the project. There's also going to be, and there has been already, a lot of sewer main improvements. We're replacing the sewer wherever the sewer needs to be replaced. This analysis was done so that when we're investing so much in this project, we don't have to come back later and tear up the street to fix any sewer main issues. So that's the hope and the goal by adding a lot of this utility underground work during this project. So it's the sewer main is being replaced, as well as large portions of the water main as well. In addition, we're getting high-speed fiber optics installed into the street as well. So this was as a result of community suggestions during previous meetings. A lot of community members were asking for high-speed fiber if we can get that installed. So we ended up reaching out to all the utility companies, and our director Nabil, he encouraged us to do this and incentivize them to come in and put in fiber. And I want to just mention that we've always told them, the utility companies, about our project, and there was never any interest, but due to the community interest, we really wanted to incentivize them, so that when we reached out to them, we told them that if they are able to come in, we'll waive their accelerated plan check fees. We'll also take care of their paving for them. And a lot of times, the most expensive cost for these companies to come in and put fiber in is the paving that needs to be done after they do that. And so by us offering to take care of the paving for them, that really incentivized them. And we have Verizon came in, and they're actually right now installing fiber optics throughout the entire corridor. So that was we're really happy to see that. And then another new improvement is the street lighting conduit. So the initial plan, there's already street lighting conduit in the ground. We were planning on using the existing street lighting conduit, just replacing the street lights and putting new wiring in there. And then our initial investigations showed that the street lighting conduit was okay to use. But after we got into construction, we started opening up the ground and exposing the conduit. We found out that unfortunately the conduit was in worse shape than we anticipated. And so it was determined that it's better to just install all new conduit. And when I say conduit, I mean the pipe. It's the pipe that goes in the ground that the wires go through that power all the streetlights, for those that don't know what I'm referring to. But it's really good that we're able to replace all the conduit, so that in the future, we won't have to worry about the conduit breaking or getting water inside and shorting out the street lights. So happy to say that we're able to do that as well. Now for the focus areas. The focus areas are getting all the same improvements that the overall corridor is getting. But in addition to that, they're going to be getting these sidewalk extension or bulb outs in the intersections. This is designed to slow down cars as they cross through the intersection. It also helps with pedestrians crossing the street to give them a shorter crossing distance. And it also just beautifies the intersections, because we're able to add landscaping. In addition to that, there's going to be concrete intersections. So like the regular asphalt black pavement is going to be replaced with a decorative concrete intersection. So this will really give it a unique and nice look throughout these intersections. In addition to that, there's going to be some monument signage, and there will be also string lighting that's going to go across the street, zigzagging across the street throughout these focus areas as well. So as far as public art on South Main, we heard suggestions and requests that public art be implemented from our previous meetings. So we teamed up, the Public Works Agency teamed up with the Arts and Cultural Commission to integrate public art into the community's daily life along South Main corridor. So the Arts and Cultural Commission had a team of panelists that reviewed proposals. So these proposals, we had like a call for proposals for all artists to propose ideas of art that they can implement or they would like to implement on South Main. So the artists submitted proposals. The Arts and Cultural Commission met on September 27th, and they scored all these proposals. Then they handed it over to the Public Works Agency, and now we're looking at those proposals and determining the feasibility of that, of those proposals, to see if we can safely implement them. And then we're also trying to figure out how much funding we have available to implement this art. So I just want to make it clear that the funding that we have for this project, the $21 million, was not meant for public art. It was meant to install and construct all the infrastructure for this project, because this project was mainly an infrastructure project. But we are looking to, if there's any extra money, we have a contingency amount for unforeseen issues. And at the end of the project, if there's any leftover money, we're going to use that money to implement as much art as we can. So we have to wait and see, but we are evaluating those proposals right now. So as far as the construction contractor, the prime contractor is CS Legacy. And he's the prime contractor, and we have, a lot of different contractors working on Main right now. But he's the prime contractor, and the other contractors are mainly his subcontractors. And the tentative schedule, we started in May, and we are planning to be done by the end of July of 2022. And believe it or not, with all this construction, we're actually on schedule, more or less. So and I'll kind of go over the schedule a little bit later in more detail. For this project, we have a construction manager, a CM firm. And the reason why you have a CM is to coordinate closely with the community, to keep the project on time and on budget, to help problem solve any issues, and just to provide overall management. And for this project, we've hired Boutier Engineering, and the construction manager, his name is Omar Dandashi. And Omar has been a great help, and he's an expert in this field, and he's out there all the time. If you guys have been out there, you've probably seen him, and he's been a pleasure to work with. And I'm just introducing him because he's going to talk about the next few slides to go over the construction update.
Thank you very much, Sean. Really appreciate that. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Part of why we do this is to make sure we can support the communities that are out there, and we fully understand that what we're doing can be inconvenient, and we realize that, and we want to try to help that as much as possible. But to give a general construction update, we have a sequence of work that we're underway right now, and you've probably seen that if you have your businesses very close. Underground improvements are the first portions that we do. So we work our way kind of from the ground below up to the surface, and those are the street improvements. And those include things like putting in new sidewalks and curb and gutter, cross gutters, and then the pavement. We'll also see the street lights that Sean mentioned, as well as all the other improvements that we normally see that are coming with those bulb outs and the focus areas. And we'll also get in the festoon lights. Those are all part of the street improvements. And then our last portion of it will be to actually get the lighting up and running and the landscaping. So currently we are overlapping a little bit between our underground improvements and working our way to our street improvements. So if you've seen some of the work that we've done out there, we've gotten a lot of the sewer line installed. We don't have very much left. And we've done a portion of the water line, which is coming through. And then we're going to go next and start covering some of the street improvements that will help the drivability and everything else that we have out there. So one of our key features here is we want to maintain circulation. And so in advance, we do appreciate you moving as closely and slowly as possible through our construction zones. We are trying to make sure it's safe for our drivers, our commuters, the residents, as well as the businesses and our construction teams that are out there doing their work. One of our key goals is always to maintain access to the businesses and the residents. Occasionally, we do have some blips out there, and we're always available to try to help address that. And then, of course, one of the big items is to make sure we don't have utility interruptions for our residents that are out there. Next slide.
Omar, we do have a couple questions from Ben Mendoza. He's been waiting patiently. I don't know if you want to address the questions now or wait after a few more slides, but the questions are in reference.
Yeah, a few more slides. We've talked to Ben at Kelly's, and we're happy to answer his questions, but I would suggest going through a little bit more, and then we can come back to it.
That would work. Thank you.
Okay, so this is actually a good view for everybody to see. We did a short little clip. We thought it would be a great visual so everyone can understand a little bit of the construction zone from a different perspective out there. So this will definitely give you a little bit of feel for a very long construction site and a lot of activity going on. The pavement you're seeing obviously is where you see a lot of the brand new and temp paving, is where we have trench lines and we have new sewer that has gone in. And of course, that's creating some of that bumpiness that we have out there. And again, that's not permanent, that is temporary, it needs to be maintained. The city has taken some great efforts to make sure that our contractors are doing a lot of that work with a lot of maintenance, I mean, essentially, as we're getting through all this. So let's go through a little bit of where we are right now. So at this point, we've installed over 3,200 linear feet of new sewer main. And keep in mind, these sewer mains that we're putting in with the infrastructure for the city will be around for definitely 50, 60, 70 years. This is what we're trying to do, make sure we have and ensure that the residents and the businesses will be able to have functioning facilities that will be without too much maintenance and ready for use. Water line, we've installed about 700 linear feet at this point. We will be doing a lot more in the next few weeks, as you're going to see us come through. We're expecting to have a lot of that done probably by the early part of next year. And then we'll be moving to all the surface improvements. So in areas where we're not doing underground improvements, in order to maintain our schedule, we are moving forward with surface improvements. And so these are included as the concrete planters that you've seen out there, as well as some of the wheelchair ramps, cross gutters, and things of that nature. So at this point, we have about 35 planters installed. That's a nice portion of them, probably about 40% or so. And where you have the wheelchair ramps, about 29, that is probably, I would say, about 40% as well. And as we clear up the underground areas, we'll be back in to do those surface improvements, so we're not interfering with both operations at the same time. We've had 17 bus shelters that have been relocated. And as Sean has mentioned, the new ones will be starting to come in very soon. And so we again appreciate all the residents and businesses out there that use the bus circulation system. We are working closely with OCTA to try to maintain the bus stops as operational as possible, as often as possible, and maintain the bus route. So we've had a few things out there that have moved that around. We're planning on trying to do the best we can to make sure that those routes stay active and open. Streetlight conduits, this is a big piece of what Sean mentioned. We're very fortunate to be able to put in this new conduit, which will lead into a lighting system that will be very reliable and available for the next multiple decades. And right now we've put in about 7,000 linear feet of that conduit. And so that's a separate operation that's going on. And then concurrent with that, even though they look fairly similar, we have high-speed fiber coming in with Verizon, and they've been making some excellent progress. So they are typically in areas where we don't have the underground improvements, so that we're trying to make sure our zone is used as efficiently as possible. And we are now beginning the concrete flat work that's occurring all the way up and down. You'll see the beginning of some of the focal area concrete work that's happening that initially started today, and that's by close to First Street at this point. So challenges. So we turn around and make sure that we are looking at all these things. So when we get your feedback, we're very appreciative of that. So primary things that we do look at is we want to make sure that we're maintaining the business operations to the greatest extent that we can. We can't obviously keep you in perfect condition as we're moving through and putting in installations for different infrastructure. And part of what we end up doing, just as a quick background for everybody, one of the questions that we've had on a fairly significant basis is why the traffic control is the way it is. Traffic control is set up in a way that we can do stages. So what may not be seeming so obvious, from the surface, we want to give you some background. An illustration of that is we've had questions about the water lines going in. So water lines are installed at a actually pretty quick pace in the ground. We get them through different segments, and each of these segments now have to be tested and turned back over to make sure they're fully operational, the pressure's there, they're clean, and ready for new drinking water to be in there. And then from there, we actually do your direct connections to your meters. So some of these things that are looking through, you may see that the work is happening, but then we move through that zone, but the traffic control is remaining there. This is intended so that we can handle construction staging properly and keep everything safe. And we can't fully turn over a street back to operation until we know what's happening directly beneath, and making sure that we have everything disinfected and tested. So our primary view is always to maintain the business operations. Occasionally we do have problems, and we appreciate you letting us know, and we go and make sure we talk to our contractors and take care of that right away. So impacts to businesses and commuters and residents, this is something we're very sensitive to. We recognize that our operation through there is not convenient, but we hope that with the patience that you've provided us so far, that we're able to provide you a great product in the end. You're going to be very happy with everything we finish and we start doing. Another area that is a very big concern for us is maintaining safety. So we have drivers that are going through these zones. We have people who are turning left and turning right, driving straight through. We have to move traffic around. We're in a very tight area. And so we appreciate the patience we have. We've posted everything at about 25 miles an hour. And that's for a good reason. We want commuters to be safe, residents to be safe, and also our construction teams out there. The driving conditions is a concern. So we're not going to tell you that we love the bumpiness out there, but we want to let you know it is temporary. And temporary will be until we can start getting some of the final paving done in front of these utilities, as well as now working on segments of the roadway to get everything paved. We are looking at options with our contractor out there to make sure that we can have blocks finished at a time and see if we can get the paving completed and get a much smoother surface with you. One little plus I will tell you that the city is very careful about making sure that we don't use what would be considered very temporary pavement. We're using actually what's referred to as a hot mix. Hot mix is your permanent paving material, but it's used in the temporary condition. Oftentimes contractors will use what's referred to as a cold mix, and that requires a lot more maintenance. So by doing this and the city requiring this, we're actually ensuring that we have a better surface that's more reliable over the time frame of the project itself. The other thing that we've looked at very carefully is trying to make sure we're coordinating with water and sewage usage. So we don't want any of the businesses to be down. I think so far we've been fairly successful with making sure that we have operational sewer and water. And if you do run into something from your business specifically, we'd like to sit down and talk to you so that we can make sure we can maintain full operation all the way through. And if you run into special conditions, we're happy to try to accommodate you as much as possible. And we have done that so to date, and I think we'll continue to do that. Some of our construction challenges. So this is a little bit from the reverse perspective here. So as Sean mentioned, we did take a look at the existing conduits being out here. And so we found that, and it's illustrated by these two pictures, you can see the conduit that was in place is about 1.5 inches. So that's the size. And the new one we're putting in is 2 inches. So it's fairly large in comparison. But you can also see that over a period of time, these lighting conduits, as with all infrastructure, do take a little bit of time. And so they've kind of reached a point where we could not fully utilize them. So this is an opportunity that Sean and his team with the city have come back and said, let's go ahead and take the time, put in the new conduit, which means it'll be here for multiple decades. I would say 50 decades, or 50, not decades, but 50 years plus to put that in there. So at this point, we've added to our project about 21,000 linear feet of new streetlight conduit, which will provide excellent reliability for those lights, and we'll maintain them for years to come. Another one of our challenges has been unsuitable soil. So as we start opening up the streets, part of what we don't see is what we get to find out when we start cutting in and putting in this case, the sewer. So what you're seeing in the pictures illustrate a little bit of material that we run into. The native clay that we have out here is, if you've ever used clay before, I mean, it's like you're using clay for, something you would make like a clay pot. It tends to be very slick and it holds moisture a lot. So we have a really moist condition. And so one of the challenges is that we need to make sure we get proper compaction in these trenches, which means they provide now the full surface improvements that encases our sewer lines and water lines properly. And we ran into a bit of an issue. And so what we've done is we've took a look for innovative ways to try to use that material, not have to take it away, and actually mix it in with something that will actually work really well. So the combination on the lowest picture to your right, we'll see an example of 2 types of materials, the native material as well as a different material that now provides the granularity and the moisture. And so now at this point, we have a really good process. We've worked very closely with the contractor and we've minimized the absolute cost for this. And the long-term effects is we're going to have a very stable system in place. Unidentified utilities. This is one of our favorites. We do an extensive amount of planning and the city has too. Every time we open up a street and look at something, and with Santa Ana, we have an old city here. And we also have places that we've been adding things and putting things in over a period of probably over 100 years. Records today are excellent within public works departments. Records probably 100 years ago, not as good. We keep learning and getting better. And so one of our challenges is looking at unidentified utilities that are in the ground. So these are a couple examples of things that we find. So the upper picture shows you an illustration of the water line we are putting in. And the one that's adjacent to it is an old line that was abandoned a long time ago and was left in the soil, and it was not able to be identified. So as we open things up, we now start looking and seeing a lot of open utilities. The lower picture is an excellent illustration of us trying to fit in things that we need to do to improve everything that's out there. And you can see all the pipes that we have there. So these are a combination of, could be gas lines, in this case, street light. They also include a communications bank. They include traffic signal wiring. So we tend to find ourselves in a very tight spot as we're trying to look at where we're going to put in all these improvements. And so these are some of the challenges that we have ongoing that could not be planned for in advance. But all the records that the city has had have entered into a really good set of plans that we are now using. And then comes the portion of it where we actually have to figure it out in the field. Another one that we wanted to illustrate to you, again, some of the little unknowns that we find. This is actually a portion of a damaged storm drain. So this storm drain is actually very old. From the original records, they're 1940s. So we kind of do the math. It's been around for a long time. Construction techniques have obviously changed significantly as over a period of time. And so when we run into some of these construction challenges, we now have to do some replacements, and we sort of deal with this as construction occurs and for things that we couldn't have planned for. In this case, we have a new design. It's being worked very closely with our engineer. And then now we're going to be able to implement it in the field, hopefully within, we'll call it probably right after the holidays at this point. So. Community concerns. So we want to make sure that we are looking at the ones that we have seen. So as we've talked to you over a period of time and we've had our outreach, we obviously have seen the following that we've listed there. So business access during construction. Again, one of our top challenges, because we're moving through right in front of your businesses. Sometimes we're underground, we have to block something. Sometimes we're pouring a sidewalk or putting in a driveway. But our goal is to always maintain access. We realize that there's also some level of inconvenience that comes with that as we're doing our work, but we are trying to be as efficient as possible and to get through the businesses right in front of you and make sure that you can have the maximum coverage and open part of it. We've also provided some signage, which has helped a little bit to provide that access or indicator where people can actually drive. Street circulation is also very large now, so we're talking still about 2.5 miles of work that we're doing in an area that's a very heavily used street. So at this point, I think some commuters have attempted to move around from one street to another as part of the circulation. We are obviously trying to maintain that single lane in each direction as a minimum. Where we can open up something, we definitely would like to do that. So our focus is to make sure we're maintaining safe traffic control and providing as much circulation. So there is a bit of a balance point between both. We also have bicyclists that have gone out there. We've talked to a few of the residents that like to use their bikes and want to use the street. It's not super conducive for that, obviously. We would always recommend that you use one of the adjoining streets that are parallel on either side, 1 block away. No construction is occurring over there. However, that being said, we are trying to maintain as safe as possible circulation as we go through. We will always be looking out for that to make sure that we can do that. I don't know that we can provide anything that would completely satisfy that safe condition until we can be done with construction. The traffic delays, again, we do completely understand that we do cause those by narrowing down lanes and moving things over. And we definitely hear you. We would like to try to open things area as much as possible. So we're always looking for ways to, again, do that balance between getting traffic delays and being able to be safe with the construction crews. The balance point as well is residents that are crossing the streets. We have motorists that are going through. We have people who are trying to park in front of businesses. And we have construction crews that are trying to move through as quickly as possible. The construction noise, this is something that will be not something we completely avoid. I know that we wish we could have very silent equipment, but unfortunately that's not the case. And so again, we attempt to work within very close hours that we're allowed to with the city, with our construction crews that are out there. We attempt not to do work longer than that so we can minimize that noise impact. And we have sort of the work hours that you do see. Most of the time, the contractor's working as early as they can in the morning. Roughly our hours are between 7 and 3. We end up having an 8-hour workday, which is what sets that. Construction crews start fairly early and they finish early and they start early the next day. And so our attempt to try to minimize that noise is to keep it within those timeframes and not extend it too far outside of that. And then we did have several comments regarding the planters for traffic calming. So the planters are a key part of creating that. This is something that has been very focal for the city in the design efforts. Right now, they are in an interim condition, so we're attempting to make them as safe as possible by making sure that we have additional delineators. These are those kind of the orange bars that you see sitting up. So you get that final look and you can see that they're there. We're putting in these little A-frames within them to get, again, more visibility. Once we're finished with them, they will have a lot of visibility. We're going to have a marker that people will be able to see. They'll be painted red on one side. We'll have reflectors going up to them, reflectors on them, and then they'll be planted. So they will not have the form that you see today. So we appreciate your patience as we're getting those up and running. Keep in mind that the landscaping and some of those final elements come at the end of the project because they're necessary to have all the other improvements done, including the paving in advance of that. So, but we're currently underway and we'll keep you posted on that. If you see something that's unsafe, please let us know. We want to make sure we put additional traffic control around it to make sure that no one else runs into something.
Omar, we received a raised hand during the construction challenges. Would you be available now to address their question or comment?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, it's from Tim Johnson. Tim, would you like to speak?
Hey there. Hey.
Oops.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Omar, this is Tim Johnson. We've spoken before.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for the update. Couple of things. One, have you had any success on getting the contractor to not leave traffic control up unnecessarily? Like we've talked about this happened numerous times. They're causing delays, especially over weekends when there's no reason for it to still be up.
Yeah, we are definitely doing that, Tim. I mean, one of the things where we have a combination of different types of construction areas that are underway. I mean, some that are more, I'll put them in the quasi-permanent stage, like the water work, and then there's others that are streetlight related. So those will move as they move along with their work. So we're looking to try to minimize those. There's a handful of areas that, as I mentioned in the presentation, like with the water, that we have to finish doing the disinfecting and testing before we can turn.
Omar, but to be fair, I mean, you know the ones I'm speaking about, and there's been no reason for those to maintain to stay up, other than laziness or not wanting to move a sign. You know, when you have a lighted sign that has 3 cones in front of it and 3 cones behind it, and there's no reason for that. Those are the types of things I'm talking about. I'm not talking about open pits and you know those types of things. So that's what I'm really, and that's what's driving some of the residents crazy, especially when it's in front of Kelly's and some of those types of businesses down there that they can't have access to. So that are you guys making any headway with that?
Yes, yeah, we definitely are on that. There's certain areas that we're going to kind of look at and revamp, Tim, that some of the ones that we did talk about that were closer up to First Street. And then, of course, we're trying to make sure that we keep everything buttoned up for the holidays and not have any issues there. But the answer is yes.
Yeah, I would highly suggest, especially over weekends. I mean, there's no reason to have all these lanes closed down over the weekends like we've talked about. And then you said that you're using all hot pack, which I thought that you were using cold pack on a lot of these patches. So did I have a misunderstanding there, or?
No, we're using a hot mix, which is what you're seeing permanently. So if it looks like pavement, that looks like it would be basically in your street, that's the hot mix. If there's a little edge condition that we've talked about, the contractor can use cold mix on top of that. It just takes more maintenance for them. But so it's a combination of both, but the permanent replacement that we have in there on a
So what are we seeing all the problems that you and I have walked the street on? Those are all cold mix, though, if I remember correctly.
No, those are all hot mix. So the cold mix might be for a
So
little
they're
edge
not, they're
condition, but
just
they're all
not,
hot mix.
so they're just not compacting the hot mix down appropriately, or putting,
Y-
you know, to where we're having, you know, essentially it feels like you're on a 4-wheel drive road.
There's a combination of two different things. So with the different contractors that we have out there, they're each handling their own. Some of the ones that you and I talked about where we have the extra little dip, that's with essentially our pothole contractor that's doing some work with Verizon. And so we're working very closely with them to get that back in there so that we don't have those big dips. The larger ones where you're seeing the laterals, that's a different company. It's SRK. They're doing our sewer and water work. And so they've maintained those and come back. They're still going to be bumpy, Tim. I mean, I don't think we're going to get away from having that. But we need to have hot mix is our first choice, and that's what the city is requiring. And then if they choose to take care of the little lips, not the big dips like you and I looked at, they can use the cold mix for that.
Does that answer your question, Tim?
Okay, I'm not, I'm kind of losing you a little bit, but is there any,
Whoops.
Did he drop off?
I didn't see him.
What happened? Where is he?
Michelle, we can try him again just to,
He's
We-
still there, but he doesn't have
it
the,
doesn't detect his audio.
right, so he lost his audio. Sorry, Tim, hopefully you can hear us. We'll come back to you shortly. Omar, we do have a couple more construction questions before, if you could address those before we go on to the next part of the presentation, would that be okay?
Of course. Yes, please.
Okay, so from Ben Mendoza, why is it that the construction company stops working at 3 p.m. every day? They're directly in front of my business, Kelly's Body Shop, which is at 2041 South Main Street.
Yeah, hi, Ben. I think we've chatted a little bit. I know you've talked to our Inspector Martin, and I think you've talked to Nick Biro and Justine Flores from our outreach team. They work an 8-hour day. They start fairly early. So they would start somewhere between 6 and 7, we're usually out there at 7, and they go till 3 p.m. That's their general work day. So it's an 8-hour workday. We're trying to make sure that we're working within a normal workday for them, as well as making sure that we don't keep the constant noise going out through the entire day. So they're not leaving early, just to let you know, they are working just a regular 8-hour workday. So that's fairly normal and typical, but they do start earlier than most people, and they stop a little bit earlier as well.
Okay. He also added that he's never seen a construction company stop working so early. It seems this project is never ending and very, very slow.
So, I mean, I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about some of the different things. I mean, one of the comments that I mentioned, because I know the water line has been a concern for you. When we finish installing water lines, we essentially have to put them in segments, and then we have to test them for pressure as well as for disinfection. And then we can turn them over for actual usage and connect back water services. So there are periods of time where you're going to see nothing occurring, but it's not because nothing is occurring on the surface. There isn't anything occurring, but the testing and disinfecting usually takes about, a week, 48 hours, depending on which component of it, as we try to finish up things. We can't turn over to the city for operational use like a block at a time. So we do them in segments according to a plan that we've developed with the city and the contractor. So there's going to be that appearance that nothing is happening, but really there is a lot of planning that goes behind it. If you'd like to go through some specifics in front of what's going on directly in front of your store, I'm happy to meet with you.
Omar, Ben also shared that also the construction company knocked out water service to the business about 3 weeks ago. And he called Public Works and they confirmed that the water line was cut. And they said it would be repaired and back on soon. And when the city turned the water back on, the water pressure was released too quickly. And that caused a pipe in front of, whoops, what happened here?
It's in front of his driveway. So I've
Right in
actually been
front of
out
the
there to see it.
business to burst and cause a slow water leak. And
Okay.
he had 2 representatives from the city come out and tell him the pipe was in the driveway, so the city was not liable for the damage. However, American Leak Detector stated that the reason my pipe had burst and had not had an issue before was because when the water service was turned back on after the repair, it needed to be done in a certain manner to avoid releasing too much pressure. It appears that was not done. So why my business that for 30 years has never had a water leak, I had to pay over $1,000 to repair a leak caused by the construction on South Main Street. That is not how the city should be helping my business and improving South Main Street.
So, I mean, I think part of the leak that we talked about with you, Ben, was before we actually got close to where you're doing the work in that corner of your driveway. Because I actually went out there to see it as well with our inspector. I'd be happy to meet with you to talk about the results from your leak detection people. That's the first time we've heard about that, but let me know when you're available. I'll come out and meet with you.
Mhm. And Tim Johnson had asked earlier, how many non-city employees are on the call? And there's 14, just to update on that. And then there was another question about how do businesses seek city reimbursement for loss of income due to the construction, other than seeking legal remedies?
I can, provide somewhat of an answer to that. We don't have a vehicle for that. We strive to keep access to businesses open at all times during construction to avoid loss of business. And, I know construction's never easy. We're doing a lot of construction on this street, but it is, the contractor's priority to maintain access at all times. There's always one lane in each direction available, and driveways to businesses are always maintained. And we're actually, something that we haven't done on other projects is we're offering these signs for anyone that asks for it that really stand out, that say that the business is open and that parking's available and whatnot. So we know that, construction's never easy, but we do hope that after, this project is done, it's going to be one of the best streets in Santa Ana, and your business will really benefit from that, in the near future.
Okay, and Ben also shared that, yes, we've lost business. Customers have come in for our auto repair estimate, and they will not come back because of the traffic and construction. Who will reimburse for those losses? So I think you addressed that, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And he added, it literally takes 25 minutes to get from Dyer to First Street. And then another comment was made from Elsa Gomez. Also, if there is any money left over from the project, it should be divided and given to every business on Main Street corridor for improvements to their businesses and not used to purchase art.
Yeah, so the money that's allocated for this project, it's most likely almost all of it will be used, if not all of it. We've added more money to this project due to all this unforeseen infrastructure issues that we're encountering. But, and in addition to that, a lot of the money that we are using for this project can only be spent on infrastructure, the infrastructure funding. So it's like gas tax and it's, Measure M and things like that can't be used for other things aside from infrastructure. And, it can be used for, the artwork that we're saying that maybe can be funded by some of this funding. We have to be careful on which funds that we select. And, because the artwork is going to be also considered an infrastructure improvement, aesthetic improvement to the infrastructure, we may be able to use some of that for that. But I wouldn't count on a lot of extra money here. You saw all the unforeseen and all the challenges we're going through. Those are very expensive surprises that the city, that the project encounters. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
And
This is Nabil. I'd like to also add to Elsa Gomez. Elsa, if you have a plan to improve on your business, if you are a business owner, could you please reach out to the Economic Development Agency in the city? They are very welcoming to ideas and funding of improvements on businesses on South Main. They are actually looking for projects. You may have one, so could you please look them up and talk to people at the Economic Development Agency to help you out. I think there may be some funds that will assist you in improving your business.
thank you, Nabil. Tim Johnson has his hand raised. Tim, I'm going to unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Sorry about that earlier. I was asking on the planter bulb outs. It seems to be a pretty dangerous type situation right now. I understand the A-frames in there, but Omar, I heard you say that ultimately there'll be paint put on the curbing, some reflection on the curbing. Is there any reason why we're not able to do that now as opposed to later? It just seems like having an A-frame in it or a cone is just aesthetically not very pleasing. And then secondarily, to kind of piggyback off of Ben's comments in terms of the businesses, it's really difficult if I'm going south on Main Street and coming from north of Santa Ana, if I were to try to get to his business, it's virtually impossible to get to his business probably 75% of the time, just because of the traffic controls. And so even though the business is open, it's not accessible to half the people because you're not able to even cross the street. But just two points there, but go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim.
To answer your question, Tim, there's the striping that we do, which will include the painting of the curves with the reflectorized portions. We could put some with what we're doing there is putting something temporary out there. I know that's something you would rather see more permanent. But however, we really can't put in the permanent until we're done with all the paving around it. We would actually damage it. We need to put down those reflectorized markers that we talked about. Those need to be put on permanent paving. There's going to be some reflectorized portions that are put on the curb itself, but they all come at the same time. They don't typically come at separate times, and it's not a convenience issue. It's a matter of trying to making sure that we get operationally put at the same correct time. We also have to plant everything and put the irrigation in there, which could cause some damage to those improvements that we would put in, like painting. So I think the answer to your question is we want to try to make sure we do something on a temporary basis until we can be ready for doing all that permanent work rather than striping them today.
But Omar, I feel like there should be like an in-between. I mean, because temporary, most of us here temporary, we're thinking a matter of weeks when it's going to be, June before we're doing paving, May and June before we're doing paving, to throw some dots down and to paint the curbing. Yeah, you might have to, you're going to have to take those dots back up, but it's not like that's a huge ordeal to put down some better safety infrastructure, especially, I mean, you've already, you kind of touched on it, but for bicyclists, it's just treacherous in there. So, I mean, there's got to be an in-between between a frame like we're looking at right now on screen versus having some dots down, some curb painting put on it, and then maybe some reflection actually on those curbs. There should be an in-between.
Well, let me give it some thought, Tim, and let me get back to you. I need to probably sit down with Sean and his team and see what we might come up with. But I mean, your point's taken.
Yeah, Tim, we'll definitely look into that and figure out something.
All right. And the
Awesome.
chance
If there's anything we can do to help businesses like Ben's out, that's huge, because you literally can't cross the street.
It will improve for Ben's business. It's going to take obviously the time to get the water line out of the way and the traffic control to move again. But I do understand that it's doing a left turn going southbound is not really easy to try to do with all the traffic going on, and it would require somebody to drive and actually do a U-turn and come back the other way. So we know that's not convenient, but our goal is to get out of the way as quickly as possible. I think for everybody's kind of consideration, we have no interest in taking extra time and being out there. We want to be as efficient as possible. The city wants us to be as efficient as possible so that we can get out of the way. But we do realize that when we start narrowing, lanes just like we have right now because of where the water line's located, it will take it's a little bit of its toll on the business itself for circulation until we can get out of the way. So our goal is to finish quickly.
Michelle?
Yes.
It's Margarita. So
Thank you, Tim.
I just wanted to comment that on the Q&A, I know we brought up Ben Mendoza's name, and he's been very extensive, in his concerns, that Ben will be reaching out to you, Omar, very soon.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
And
Thank you,
then just one other thing, just in terms of, the reality check, right? Based on the experiences that we're hearing and some of the concerns regarding the traffic controls and even the amount of time that it takes to travel through, during this period. What is the experience going to be like, or how long will it be like that, so that at least as we get questions, from after this meeting about the concerns, I mean, is it something how temporary will it last? I guess that's what I'd like to know, if you have any updates on that.
It's unfortunately, it's a very complex question, because I think as we go through the 2.5 miles, we certainly have some businesses that are affected a lot more than others at different time periods. So as things come in stages and layers, you're going to find times where the impact will actually be fairly minimal, and then other times where it'll be very extensive. An example with Kelly's Auto, it's extensive right now because we're actually right in front of where they're doing their work. Once we move away from that, it'll drop away. It'll feel somewhat more normal. And then we come back in and we do another stage of work, and then you're going to feel it yet again. Right now, it feels like things are moving slowly because we're just seeing the underground improvements come through. Once we start getting some of the surface improvements coming in, it'll feel a lot faster, but it doesn't mean progress is not occurring between those two timeframes. So I think to answer your question, it's really going to be more specific by a block or by a business that we can try to answer that question and talk about the stages, because not every business is being affected by the sewer improvements or the water improvements, and not every business is going to have a concrete planter or any of the sidewall work, or for example, a bus shelter being put in. So it does sort of move around quite a bit in 2.5 miles.
I'd like to add to that, Omar, and to Margarita, the most painful work is typically the underground work. And so that's what we've been experiencing mainly from the beginning of this project until now. But we are, I would say, more than halfway done already with this underground work. And so there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like once this underground work is complete, which should be by early next year, the rest of the work is going to be on the surface. And like Omar said, it'll happen a lot faster. The traffic control will be more condensed and probably be moving a little bit more and not so permanent. And then that will make it a lot easier to drive through the segment during those phases of construction. So we're almost there. We've gotten a lot of the undergrounding done already. There's still a little bit more to finish.
John, we have 2 more questions before we continue on with your presentation. We have a raised hand from, and I apologize if I do not pronounce your name right, Shakith Devine. Would you like to ask your question? Shakith?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so getting back to the arts issue, because I heard someone said they didn't want any funding spent on it. And I put together a project for the Main Street that would drive in commerce. So when I put a submission together for the city of Santa Ana, I tried not to do a vanity project. So I met with the logistics department of MIT, and I come from Harvard University with a background in urban planning and development. And I also have another friend, and we figured what would bring the people in, get them over to Main Street and generate commerce, initiate new restaurants in the district. And we figured that it was going to have to be some sort of an attraction that would constantly drive people in to see it, whether it be that the attraction creates Instagram moments, or that food trucks could host little festivals that would hook up with the children's, the School of the Arts or Chapman University or Rancho Santiago. So we proposed an outdoor cinema. We knew that with COVID, people weren't going to want to go back to movies, but if they were outdoor, then it kind of energized the plaza. And it also created a situation where people would come over to see this theater screen from downtown Santa Ana on Art Walk nights. And you need something like that to kind of energize and get people moving and walking up and down Main Street. I met with the head of economic development to discuss this a little bit, because I knew this was a little bit beyond a submission for the Arts and Council. And it needed to be thought out by the activists of Main Street. They need to see what I wrote down and what I proposed. And I hope they take some time out to do that, because it was really well thought out how to bring more commerce and how to raise property values and kick off a whole new segment of revitalization of a portion of Santa Ana that has been overlooked for a very long time. You know, I'm one of the founders of the Santa Ana Arts Walk, so I've had a vested interest in the city for almost 30 years now. So I was very cautious and delicate when I looked at the situation. Okay,
Thank you, Shaki.
all right.
And we have another question here. Direction, when the lighting happens, will the power be cut off? If so, when?
To answer your question, the power will not be cut off. So what you're going to see in the stages of our work right now, we're putting in the street lighting conduit, which is part of that operation. We're also pouring in foundations for our new lights. These are the Edwardian lights that Sean mentioned. You'll notice that the existing lights are still there, and they will not be taken offline until we have our new lights. And so you're going to find ourselves in a condition where we have more lights because they're more decorative and they're a little bit shorter. And then the older lights will be removed and salvaged for the city for any other use. And so during our time frame of turnover, switch between block to block as we do this, you'll end up seeing probably 2 sets of lights that are effectively working. And then one of them will go away, which is the older lights. So we won't be in a position where we're leaving anything dark out there and unsafe. So we'll always have lighting.
Thank you, Omar. And then Irma asked, is there going to be signage to indicate there is a bike trail on the east of Main Street?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Sean, I can try to answer that one.
Yeah.
There currently isn't any planned along the corridor as part of the signing and striping plan, but since you're bringing it up, that's something that we could probably look into to try to encourage bicyclists to use those parallel routes that are currently in place. But yeah, I was looking at that in the chat, and that's something that we can look into to try to implement either as a permanent condition at the end of the project or even in the interim. But thank you for that comment. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ruben. Sean, I think you can continue on now.
Okay, thank you. So kind of just to recap, this project is bringing a lot of public benefits ultimately to this corridor. So to recap, we're getting, you know, increased reliability for our sewer and water for businesses and residents. Long-term traffic calming improvements. The speed limit on Main Street is only 35 miles per hour, but as you guys are probably well aware, people speed down Main Street quite often, and it's even during construction, we're constantly having to have the police come out and show presence so that to get cars to slow down because they drive really fast down this corridor. So we're hoping that, you know, this project will help kind of make things safer. Enhanced intersections are going to take place where you'll see, you know, decorative intersections. We're going to enhance the pedestrian experience, decorative and reliable street lighting system, enhanced landscaping, and the high-speed fiber. All right, so let's talk schedule. So we're now what we consider phase 2 of the project. As I mentioned, we got a lot of the sewer work already complete. And now we are working on the water line on the south part of the project. And we have a small segment of sewer in the on Edinger Avenue. That's going to be taking place at nighttime. So that's going to be taking place at night over the next few weeks, where they're going to be, it's such a big impact to that roadway. And there's no real easy way to do it during the day. They're going to be working on it at night and closing it up, but then opening things up as much as they can during the day for traffic, and then coming back and closing it back up at night again. So even although at night when they do close it up, it's not going to be completely closed. There'll still be access, at least one lane. So if you do have to travel through that area at night, you will be able to get through. We're going to be also working on the lighting conduit installation. They've installed about half of that lighting conduit. They're moving pretty fast, so that should get done fairly quickly. And also Verizon's coming in. If you drive down the corridor and you see a big reel with orange, like what looks like orange tubing. That's the Verizon fiber install that's happening. So you'll see a lot of that going on throughout the corridor. And then we're also going to see some of these concrete intersections being started. So that'll be pretty exciting when we see those come up. It's going to look really nice. So that'll get us kind of through March. And then for the overall schedule, we're still pretty on schedule. Like this schedule shows that it goes, we'll be done in sometime in July. With all this unforeseen and unidentified things that we encountered, I'm happy to say, thanks to the team, the contractor, the construction management team, and the city teams, that we have made up some time so that even though we had those unforeseen situations, we're more or less on schedule here. I think we're realistically, it's going to, instead of ending in July, it'll probably end in August now. But hopefully we can, still get it done in July. So that's it for the schedule. And as far as project information and contacts, I think Tim mentioned in the chat, and I'm appreciative that he mentioned that Boutier and Blue Mountain and our construction management team is very available and responsive. So feel free to reach out to them at any time. You can get to them by going through our website. On the website, there's contact information, there's phone numbers, emails, but there's also the project hotline, which I'm showing here. It's 714-565-MAIN or 714-565-6264. If you call that number, you can get directly in touch. If it's like an urgent situation that you need to talk to someone right away, there's an option to get in touch with somebody right away. If it's not an urgent situation, you can leave a voicemail to the appropriate person and we will get back to you within 1 or 2 business days. So if you've ever tried calling that hotline, I'm sure you know that we're very responsive. We'll reach out to you right away. Copies of your message goes to multiple people. So, we have checks and balances to make sure that we're getting back to you right away. We also have Michelle Mcallist, who's our project community liaison. Her phone number is on the screen. My direct number is on the screen as well as Omar's. And then if you have questions about the art installation, feel free to reach out to Tram Lee. Her information is also on the screen.
And Sean, we do have a couple other questions. There is a comment from Irma on the art walk. It'd be a good idea to show it to the different neighborhood association meetings if you want the residents' input. And a question from Janelle Hardy. Will there be a unified signage to show from street that business parking is behind buildings off street? There's a need for this kind of business parking signage, and it should be designed to be consistent and planned into the signage project.
That's not part of the public signage that's going to be installed. That type of signage identifying that, or informing the customers, the future customers, that there's parking on the backside is typically responsibility of that business owner. That private property is considered more of a private property business owner type of signage. It's not something that the city is able to fund. Again, because it is considered a private property type of improvement. I know in some cases we do install signage, but that's for public parking facilities, but never for private businesses.
Ruben, I can add to that though. During construction though, if you want a sign like that, we are offering temporary signs that we can put up during construction to show that the business is open and if there's parking in the rear. So we can do that on a temporary basis during construction. Please reach out to the construction team if you'd like a sign like that in front of your business.
Thank you, Sean and Ruben. And we, Shakith has raised his hand, has another question. Shakith, I'm going to unmute you if you'd like to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, on my project, I did address the issue of parking and marquees. So on my packet, if you go look through the Arts Council, you will see rough sketches of marquees that would be placed up and down Main Street for various reasons. And one of them would be outstanding and to help the merchants with letting people that drive down the street know there's parking in the rear. You know, I've got another space over in Costa Mesa and nobody knows that half the buildings, they can park in the back. So I think it's just one more thing that people become more familiar with traversing through the neighborhood, and they see that there's not a shortness of parking, so they're more apt to come there in future months and weeks down the road. So anything to help familiarize people with the area and make it seem that it's friendly and easy to park is going to be really great for the business owners. So please have a look at my proposal, because there are rough concept designs of marquees that could be applied to that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Shakib. And we have another question from Janelle Hardy. What is the lifespan of the new decorative concrete street treatments?
The lifespan is, 60, 70 years probably. Concrete, we're putting in a thick section of concrete and it's going to last a very long time. That's part of the reason why we're making sure that we're taking care of all the underground stuff right now before we put that very permanent concrete in.
Okay, thank you, Sean. And Shakib has his hand raised again. I'll unmute you. Shakib, can you?
Yeah, no, I
speak?
don't. I don't.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I mean, not
we're-
good, but thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Margarita, are there any questions or comments that we overlooked here?
So I think there are a couple of comments. I just thought maybe it could be a follow-up, I think, from the city staff end. One is in terms of the impacts that some of the businesses are experiencing, like a little bit stronger, where you have some of the sewer or the other work that's being done. Following up with the economic development team to see what kind of business assistance, because I think in general, we know that businesses, even before this project with COVID, we are familiar that businesses have been impacted. So it's more of a coordination, back with the businesses, the participants on this call, but in general, the businesses in that area to see, what resources are available, separate from this project, but even with this project, what else, what other assistance could be made available. That's what I'm getting from the chat messages today. And then the suggestion about sharing the artwork or whatever is being proposed with the neighborhoods, right? There are about 4 to 6 neighborhoods along that stretch. And so that's just another opportunity to share information, to get input so that people are in sync with, as the improvements start getting implemented, people will know in advance, what to expect, or they will have had an opportunity to review in advance. So that's another comment I just wanted to raise just by what I'm reading on the chat.
Thank you, Margarita. We appreciate you reporting issues just to keep Santa Ana beautiful. And to report public works issues, you can call our Public Works Dispatch at 714-647-3380, or you can email our Public Works Dispatch at pwadispatch@santa-ana.org, or you can go online and at the city's website on the homepage is a tab that you can report issues to. Or even better, if you have a smartphone, an iPhone or Android, you can download our My Free Santa Ana app. Nabil, do you have any closing comments before we conclude the meeting?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. I just would like to thank everyone for attending. And I'd just like to also emphasize that construction projects are not easy to deal with. I just would like to encourage the attendees to drive our recently finished projects like Flower Street and Bristol. For those 2 projects, we did receive complaints and such, but just because individuals or residents are not patient enough with the construction, and we understand why. But please drive those two projects and see how good they look. And we promise that we will finish South Main corridor in a shape that is very similar to those two finished projects. And hopefully you'll like the end result, but just be patient with us. Another point is I would like to encourage businesses along South Main corridor to connect with our city economic development agency and look for opportunities for improvements on their facade, on their businesses. I believe that there is funding and there is opportunities that that agency has in terms of assistance in many ways that they would love to help you. But you need to make the first attempt to reach out to them. So I encourage you to do that. We are, with doing this, public works improvements along the corridor, and that's only one step. We would like to see a better business opportunities in the and improve on the facade and the businesses and help the businesses along that South Main. So please reach out to the Economic Development Agency for help. And thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Nabil. Again, thank you everyone for attending tonight. Have a great night, stay safe, and enjoy the holidays. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.